and I want to thank you all for joining us today. I know some of you are live on our webinar and some of you are joining us live on Facebook. Really excited to be here today. I have so many wonderful people who are here who are going to help us make Gail's Law a reality in Florida. So I am not going to do a whole lot other than to say, we're going to introduce our panelists. They're going to talk a little bit, and then I'm going to open this up for questions. Today's purpose is to really tee us up for the legislative session, give everybody the talking points and answer any burning questions they may have. If you're a member of the media, feel free to ask questions. You can either enter into the live chat on Facebook, and those will get to us, or enter them into the Q&A here on the webinar, depending on what platform you're on. So with that, really excited to kick this off with introducing the two sponsors of this legislation this year. First of all, Representative Emily Schlossberg, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for really helping spearhead this. You were the House of Representatives, the first one really to step up and say you were 100% in. So thank you so much. Can you tell a little bit? I'm going to give a quick little bio, actually. You're from Palm Beach County, representing that area. You represent House District 91, which encompasses Delray Beach, Boca, and Boynton Beach. You are very involved in traffic safety. Thank you very much. Working on some hand-free texting and things like that here in the state of Florida, but also accessing mental health services. And I know you're also a huge advocate for sexual assault survivors. You were elected in 2016 and re-elected in 2018. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Representative Schlossberg to tell us a little bit about why she's so passionate about this issue.
Thank you so much, Carol. Thank you for putting this on. And I also want to give a shout out to Senator Linda Stewart, who we'll be hearing from. She's also been a tremendous advocate for survivors of sexual assault. As you just stated, this issue has been one of my bills that I've filed every legislative session. It has been a priority for me. In 2016, the legislature, we passed measures requiring sexual assault kits to be processed within 30 days and completed within 120 days. And then last session, we passed, Senator Stewart was the sponsor in the Senate, passed measures eliminating the statute of limitations on sexual assaults for minors. Donna's Law, as everybody here is instrumental in. So we have made steps, taken steps in the right direction. This will ensure accountability. This House Bill 673 on the House side, Gail's Law, will ensure accountability for these rape kits, the timelines associated with the rape kits, and give access to these survivors of sexual assault. Every year, Florida Department of Law Enforcement and local crime labs around the state receive thousands of sexual assault kits for processing. However, there's no centralized method for tracking the location or processing the status of these sexual assault kits. And no victim of sexual assault should have to watch their attacker escape justice because evidence was similar to Gail's case, just mishandled or not processed timely. Nobody should have their sexual assault kits sitting on a shelf for so many years. This will ensure that victims are not re-victimized. I look forward to working with Senator Stewart on the Senate side and getting this legislation passed.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really honored to introduce Linda Stewart. Senator Stewart has been such a champion, and she was, again, one of the first persons that I chatted with about Donna's Law. Donna had come to her previously. She sponsored it every single year that it was before the legislature and was truly, truly instrumental in making sure that Donna's Law passed. I know it wouldn't have happened without you, Senator Stewart. Senator Stewart represents our district here in Orlando. She's lived here her entire life. She was an Orange County Commissioner, which is how I first met Senator Stewart, and then representing District 4. She has always been someone who has been just, they called her the people's leader. She's always been approachable and passionate about the community and helping people. And I'm just going to add that during the pandemic, Senator Stewart was incredibly instrumental in making sure that people were able to access unemployment. Just unbelievable in taking people, even if they weren't part of her district, making sure that their names got put up into the list and their claims got taken care of. She is currently representing Florida Senate District 13, which is Northeast and Central Orange County. And she is a champion, not only for survivors of sexual assault, but for women's issue, equal pay for women, and equality. Senator Stewart.
Thank you. What a nice introduction. I wanted to say it is a pleasure to be able to do the right things for the people who have suffered, and particularly in this particular legislation, the survivors definitely have a right to know. And at this point, they have not been notified. Now, we did a good deed in 2016 when we had 8,000 rape kits sitting on a shelf, and they were told they had to clear them out, which they did. But what we have is little steps moving forward when we find something that really needs to be corrected. And this law is one of those situations, a step in the right direction. So Gail's law will do as Representative Schlossberg has mentioned a lot of different things. But one of the things that I'm most impressed about with how we put this together is FDLE is going to be required to create a statewide system for tracking the sexual assault evidence kits. And right now you might have a rape kit down in Miami, and you have one in Orlando, and you have one in Jacksonville, and they're not having one central location. And I think if we had them all centrally located when the kits come in, we can let the survivor know the status of the kit. That, you know, we found the match, we haven't found the match, we we found other people that have this, the DNA has been discovered in other areas, that perhaps this person, this perpetrator, has not only violated you, but he or she could be violating a lot of different people. And so this brings this clarity into focus. And that's what we need, is that's the accountability that Representative Schlossberg talked about. And that's what we definitely need. And I think this bill also goes to a commitment to us for empowering sexual assault survivors, right? I just can't imagine myself, and I haven't been in that situation, but I have empathy for everybody. I can't imagine being in a situation where you have been violated. You do what is required of you by giving the test, and then never hearing a word, never knowing, well, what happened to it? Well, we don't, nobody contacting anybody. And I think that that's the next step that we are taking here, is allowing the survivors to know what the status is of their rape. And I think that will be somewhat comforting. I hope that that would be comforting for those that have had to go through this horrible situation that they've had to go through. It's bad enough you've had to do that, but then not knowing is just equally as bad. So I think the bills give us tools that will enable us to do more with that kit and identify perhaps more people.
Great. Thank you so much, Senator. I'm going to hop over to Camille Cooper, and I know
I meant to mention one other thing.
Oh, yeah,
my bill cannot be heard until the first week in March, because we're on break the last week of February.
Okay.
So we have to wait till March before this can come to first committee.
Okay, great. And I'm gonna bump over to Camille Cooper real quick. Camille is, oh, my bios here, all these amazing women. She's the Vice President of Public Policy at RAINS. She has a huge job fighting for sexual assault survivors all over the United States and making sure that public policy is where it needs to be. She's a significant partner in fighting for Donna's Law last year. That's when we met. I know RAIN was just critical in coordinating the survivors that testified, and helping behind the scenes with a lot of very delicate issues that needed to be addressed behind the scenes. We couldn't have done it without Rain and without Camille's help. She focuses on efforts to secure funding for sexual violence programming, eliminating large volumes of untested and unanalyzed forensic evidence in rape kits and sexual assault, and addressing campus sexual violence and protecting children against sexual assault. So welcome, Camille.
Thank you, Carol. And I want to thank Representative Schlossberg and Senator Stewart, of course, for taking the lead on this. It means the world to us that we have members in Florida that are just relentless in their pursuit to protect survivors and open the doors of justice for survivors. So we really appreciate it. My name is Camille Cooper. I'm Vice President of Public Policy for RAIN. RAIN created and operates the National Sexual Assault Hotline, as well as the Department of Defense Safe Helpline for military members around the world. We serve about 30,000 people a month. And in the last year, about 50% of the people that we're providing services for on our online hotline are now minors. This is a new trend for us. It's a very concerning trend. We're glad that the minors know that we're available as a resource on our hotline. But what we saw during the pandemic was that children were quarantined with their abusers, predominantly family members, and that the abuse that they were experiencing at that time was pretty severe. About 1 in 5, we were connecting to 911. RAIN is the leading organization that works on the rape kit backlog funding for state and local labs. And last year, Congress appropriated about $110 million for state and local labs to process the rape kits. But even despite that funding, there's still between 200 and 400,000 rape kits in that backlog at any given time. And the reason for that is sort of where DNA has become a victim of its own success. Law enforcement has recognized that it's one of the most successful crime fighting tools that they have in their toolbox. And so they're using it and submitting much more DNA to the lab to get analyzed. In the last 10 years, there's about an 85% increase in the volume of requests for DNA analysis. I just want to mention that over the years, I've worked in the anti-sexual violence space for about 23 years. And I've been fortunate to meet some incredibly brave women like Gail Gardner, who Gail's Law is named after, and Lavinia Masters, Debbie Smith, Julie Wheel, who is from Florida, Alicia Kozakevich, Ashley Spence. These are all women that have experienced just unbelievable trauma and victimization, but they have empowered hundreds, if not thousands of other women to come forward and to tell their stories and to work to make the system better. I wanted to talk a little bit about the actual rape kit exam. It's a very traumatic experience for the survivor. It's about a 2-hour long process. It's very detailed. And I just want to remind everybody that behind every single rape kit, when we talk about that rape kit backlog, we're talking about survivors. We're talking about victims that might have been threatened with death if they came forward and told and reported their assault. We're talking about survivors that might have been victimized by someone very close to them or someone in authority, like a teacher or a boss or a police officer. And so it takes a tremendous amount of courage for them to come forward and put themselves through that exam and to come into the criminal justice system. And I also want to remind for whoever's watching, if you're an elected official, that the time between submitting to that rape kit exam and the identification of your offender is a very difficult time for survivors. They spend a lot of time worrying if the offender is going to come back, if the offender is going to be around the next corner, if they're going to run into them on the street or at the grocery store. Some of these women like Gail and Lavinia, they were sleeping in the middle of the night and an intruder broke into their home and victimized them. So we're talking about women that spent years and years and years losing sleep, literally not being able to sleep at night because for the fear that their offender would come back. Another thing I want to stress is that over the course of time since CODIS was established with the FBI, about 545,000 DNA hits have resulted in the submissions. And about 42% of those are a direct result of the Debbie Smith Act funding. The most recent study that was done on the rape kit, on rape kits, there was about over 7,000 cases that involved rape kits that were analyzed, and they found that almost 40% of the offenders that were identified through rape kit analysis were serial offenders with between 2 and 15 victims each. So also when we think about these rape kits and about DNA, we need to remind ourselves that more likely than not, we're going to find an offender that has more than one victim. And I think that that's really important, especially when we're talking about looking through the backlog of rape kits that are maybe decades old, that could lead to if we got to those rape kits sooner and we're analyzing them quickly and tracking them, law enforcement and survivors would have closure with regards to the fact that maybe a serial offender was identified much earlier than what we've had in the past. And so those are all the reasons why we need to pass this legislation. It's incredibly important legislation. It's going to bring a lot of peace of mind to survivors to be able to know what's happening with their case. And if an offender has been identified, they're going to be able to sleep at night. And for law enforcement, it's an incredibly valuable tool because they're going to be able to watch what's happening to that kid as it moves through the system as well. So I thank Representative Schlossberg and Senator Stewart for taking the lead on this.
Thank you, Camille. Thank you. And you know, you're absolutely right about the serial rapist. I mean, I know Gail is watching, and you know, her rapist, I think it's up to 25 women. You know, it's just ridiculous that we're not stopping these rapists, and we've got the evidence, and it's inexcusable. I'm really excited to introduce Representative Tracy Davis, who has been able to join us. And she represents the Duval County, Jacksonville area. Just very quickly, she's born and raised in Jacksonville, and has I didn't know this, has a master's degree in education, and has been in public service since 2001. She was also a champion of Donna's Law last year, and I know she and I have also worked on several other issues together, and I'm so excited that you are going to be signing on to Gail's Law this year and helping us. So Representative Davis, if you want to say a few words.
Thank you, Carol. I think I'm unmuted, right? Can everyone hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. First, thanks to the ladies that are on this panel, especially Representative Schlossberg, my colleague, and Senator Stewart for, like I've heard already, taking on Gail's Law. This is definitely needed. Having the experience of working with Carol last year with Donna's Law really opened my eyes. And so I look forward to helping in any way championing this type of legislation. Like Camille already said, we just got to make sure our legislators hear this bill. It is immensely important to have women that have been victimized and abused simply in this way have their day. It's all about having their day, right? And so as women working together, we are all going to make sure that this legislation gets over the finish line. And that's what it's all about. You have some definitely strong warriors working with this legislation. And I tell you, Camille is one of the best. So I look forward to this. I thank again the representatives that have taken this topic on, and we need to end violence against women. And this is one way we do it. So thank you again, Carol, for a few moments.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And finally, she wasn't able to join us on camera, but she's on phone. Elsa Nick, I know I'm not pronouncing that right. I'm so, oh, that's a great picture though. There, oh, she is on camera. There we go. Great. She is with Joyful Heart Foundation. She leads their End the Backlog campaign and has been really instrumental in giving us advice and talking points and suggestions around this legislation, helping with the drafting of it. She created the DNA Resource Center and led the center's effort to reform policies and practices related to testing rape kits. And she spent 16 years previously at the National Center for Victims of Crime. So she knows what she's doing. So we're so excited to have her this year on the fight for Gail's Law. And please, I know you're going to give us some information about the legislation and maybe some talking points that survivors can use as we move forward through the session.
You're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So it's weird. I can hear you on my phone, but I can't hear you on my computer, but you can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, so bizarre. I don't know what's happening today. Well, thank you so much for inviting me and having me on this panel. This is a topic that is so important to me and so important also to our founder. You may know her. She's plays Detective Benson on Law & Order SVU, Mariska Hargitay, and she founded our organization, Joyful Heart, in 2004. And in 2010, decided that our organization was pretty much solely focused on ending the rape kit backlog. We've been working over years. When I was at the National Center for Victims of Crime, I worked a lot with RAINN on the Debbie Smith Act. So, great to join RAINN again on this fight. Our work is much focused on work at the state level. So in 2016, we launched a national campaign to pass 6 pillars of rape kit reform in every state. And so we're looking towards, getting Florida to full reform, and really excited about that with this tracking bill. And Camille went over so many things so perfectly that I'm not going to dive back into the serial rapist statistics. That is so important in terms of preventing crime, which obviously is a huge concern to communities and to individual folks in the communities and to survivors, because survivors are, sadly intimately aware of what these perpetrators can do, and they don't stop until they're stopped. So that's one of the reasons why we're so driven to get all these rape kits off the shelf and get them tested. So our 6 pillars, I'm just going to say really quickly, because I don't want to take up too much time, are inventorying rape kits, mandating testing of those rape kits that are found in the inventories. At one point, Florida had 13,000. Unfortunately, those have been tested, thanks to many people on this call, I'm sure. Making sure that newly collected kits are tested in a timely manner, tracking rape kits, and ensuring that survivors have the right to know the status of their kit. And of course, funding for all of these reforms. So for tracking systems, everybody really has spoken so eloquently about the accountability and transparency provision. So I don't have to really spend much time on that. But I will say that, one of the things that early on in this process, when we saw the first states started looking at tracking systems, we work with an amazing prosecutor in Detroit. Her name is Kim Worthy. And she's done so much work on this issue. And, really early on in this, she said, well, you can track your shoes on Amazon and know where it is at every second. It's on this truck now, it's on that truck now, and now it's in my neighborhood. Surely we can do that with rape kits. So that's, where a lot of this started. And now 30 states have tracking systems. And we are watching at least at this point 6 bills across the country to establish tracking systems this year. So Georgia's another one of them, your neighbor. And so tracking also, besides bringing that accountability and transparency and exposing weaknesses and gaps in the rape kit handling process, also, again, it lets victims know where their kit is. And one thing, just real quickly, we did research in 2016, and we talked to survivors and advocates across the country, and really found that, and everybody on the phone knows this, that information, survivors feel very strongly that information belongs to them. And it does. And also, having the information is central to their healing and their well-being. And the opposite is true too, that not having access to it and being denied it is harmful. So with rape kit tracking systems, we are giving one way for survivors to know where their kid is at their own time, at their convenience, in the privacy of their own home, if they want to, and if they don't have to. So it's great. So I'm around for questions. I don't have to talk anymore. I could talk forever, but I will stay on for questions.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions. So if you do have questions, go ahead and enter them in the Q&A, and I will send those to the panelists. I do have one from Facebook. Does anybody else have anything else wanted to say before I go to questions? Okay. The first question is, what would you say to a survivor of rape who didn't get a rape kit, but why this legislation might be important for them if they didn't get a rape kit after the sexual assault?
Well, I'll just say that we have to have a rape kit in order to track anything. So I don't know how you would go back and recreate a DNA.
Right.
I would just add, if it's okay, that the tracking system has an impact on the system as a whole. And so it's we are pretty much solely tracking rape kits in the system. But in terms of being able to look at where kits are not coming in, if one community isn't submitting any kits, you've got a problem. And, one thing I'll just say that Mariska always says is that the rape kit backlog is a symbol of a larger problem. It's obviously very concrete, but it's a symbol of the system being dysfunctional around how we handle sexual assault cases. And so when rape kits are ignored, obviously the case is being ignored and the survivor is being ignored. So I think it does have a positive outcome and impact in that it helps to expose where those problems are, and potentially targeted resources can go to those communities where there are the issues. So that's, I think, one way it helps.
This legislation is also is holding our system accountable, because we're allowing access to the survivors. So we're ensuring that a rapist, if their DNA, if there's a hit in CODIS, they're going to be taken off the streets, and it will prevent further sexual assaults in our community. And you're right, there will be if people are not, for whatever reason, they're not performing the rape kits in certain communities, it will be exposed. And absolutely right about that.
So let me ask you this. What is the, I've got a couple questions coming in, but what is the number one reason or excuse for why they don't test these? I mean, if it was a homicide, there would be no question they would send it for forensics. Why is it that a rape kit like Gail's could sit on a shelf for 32 years when a man has committed a serial rape?
I can tackle that one. I think that there are a lot of studies that have been done that have sort of looked at the criminal justice response to sexual violence, and they've looked at it through both a racial lens and a gendered lens. And I think that there are a lot of, to sort of amplify what Ilsa was saying, the system as a whole is very dysfunctional. The whole way we respond to sexual violence is wrong. And I think that what some of the research shows us is that, particularly if you're a woman of color and you're living in a community of color, that there's going to be increased vulnerability and risk that law enforcement's not going to respond, or that the community might have a bad relationship with law enforcement and may not want to interact with law enforcement and come forward, and that there's some cultural issues there around how those communities have historically been treated by law enforcement that would prevent them from wanting to come forward. So there's a lot of reasons why someone like Gail's kit has sat on the shelf, and Ilsa has done with all the work she's done across the country on these rape kit tracking laws, and with SACI has sort of brought all of that up to the surface to expose it so that we can fix those problems in the system.
So after the bill passes, and it kind of goes back to the comments about that it'll identify the problem, what else are we going to need to have in place to be able to make sure that the kits are flowing through the system? And would an ombudsman help survivors? And I promise I did not put that prime question.
I love that idea. I love that idea. I'm just going to say we are also working on compliance with state laws because, you know, these laws get passed and you don't want to just walk away and hope they're working. And what we're finding out is some places it's not working how it was intended. And sometimes it's one word. We're working in a state right now that there's one word in the law that is being used as a loophole, and we're going back to fix that now. So we're really looking at compliance and thinking about different compliance mechanisms. So like an ombudsman or something like that at a state level that maybe is in an attorney general's office has some actual tools or a way to hold law enforcement accountable. And hospitals too, frankly. Sometimes hospitals hold on to the kits, so it's not always just law enforcement, but to hold them accountable for, not doing what they're supposed to do under the law, I think is a fantastic idea.
Well, Senator Stewart, I know that we had a huge backlog here in Orlando, and that when they tested all the rape kits, there were hundreds of rapists walking around free in Orlando. Any thoughts about locally about?
It's not even just Orlando, it was the state of Florida. So in Florida in 2016, Senator Benaquisto and Senator Book and myself, we passed the statute that said they had to test all of the rape kits within a period of time. And so they did catch up here in Florida, but what I'm concerned about is them staying caught up, and also to make sure that the survivors have more contact with the status of the rape kit. So those are two very important things. We have to understand also that we are in a budget deficit in the state of Florida. I'm certain most of other states are the same. So we have to make sure that the fiscal impact of any bill that comes through is doable. So when you look at how much it's going to cost to put a system together, we're still looking at those figures. And you want to hire an ombudsman, that's another area of additional extra money. And so as much as we want to do everything, we have to look and see what can we do. And I know I'm going to get those questions as to what the financial impact is going to be for this system that we're looking at. I'm hoping we can partner with people and bring that cost down, and that would be a talking point for passing the bill. So we're working on that.
Right. And I know that,
and on the fiscal side too, I know that the federal government provides grant programs so whatever fiscal, it could probably be made up possibly with federal dollars. So that's something that for us to keep monitoring. And we are working on the budget on just the fiscal impact for this rape tracking kits.
Yeah, we've heard everything from $900,000 to, partnering with somebody and bringing it down to 300. So we're not there yet, but we certainly are conscious of the effects.
And the good news is we have our Scott Plakin as head of judicial appropriations, and he was going to sign on to this bill and unfortunately can't because it's going to come before his committee. So that's a positive for moving this through. A couple more questions. Isn't this bill doing what VAWA is meant to do? Camille? No, I was going to say, I know it's not, but I'm going to let you dive into that one really quickly because I got another question too.
There's a couple different, and I'm going to defer this in a second to Ilsa. There's a couple different federal programs. VAWA sends a lot of federal dollars to states to provide services for sexual assault and domestic violence survivors. But in terms of like a rape kit tracking system, there's really only two funding streams that come through the federal government. One is the Debbie Smith Act that provides federal funds for the labs to actually analyze the DNA once it comes to the labs. And then I'll let Ilsa talk about the SACI initiative out of the Bureau of Justice Assistance.
Sure. I'll just mention, I think what the VAWA reference is that in the Violence Against Women Act in 2005, we put in some language that required survivors had to be able to get a forensic exam without reporting to law enforcement. your state is not eligible for VAWA grants if you are forcing survivors to participate in the criminal justice process or report to law enforcement to get a forensic exam. Now that's played out so many different ways across the country, but mostly it's about survivors being able to do sort of anonymous kits or unreported kits, they're called sometimes, or hold kits, non-investigatory kits. They're all different kinds of names. And then those kits, the survivor can have the evidence collected and those kits can be held until they decide what they want to do with them. And again, states do a number of different things in terms of how long they keep them. I think that's probably what is being referred to as far as VAWA goes.
So this is kind of a hot topic here in Florida, but it says, can women who are incarcerated have access to someone to advocate for them to have their kit tested and matched? I know with
that's going on everywhere. I mean, that's going on here in New York
Yeah,
for sure too.
I haven't heard much on that subject, so I don't know.
Representative Davis, I know Lowell Prison is up in your neck of the woods. We just had a huge federal investigation on incarcerated women being raped by guards. Is there?
Yeah, I have to agree with the group. We haven't heard anything, Carol, but bringing that question being brought up, I'm sure we can look into it. But yeah, we have some horrific issues going on at that institution.
Okay.
There's also the Prison Rape Elimination Act. Camille, I think you guys have worked on that too. And it's training, and I think there's also sort of supposed to be some hotlines and ways for inmates to report anonymously, and it's a whole other related but huge legislation. So the Prison Rape Elimination Act is what it's called. And I just know here locally in New York, we are dealing with this issue too, and we have advocacy groups that are focused on helping people, I should say, in prison that are being sexually assaulted.
Yeah, I think that.
And in fact,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that sexual violence committed against people that are in detention is incredibly underreported. Only about 8% report it, and for the obvious reasons that they probably are fearful of retaliation and things like that, and that they're not going to be believed. So it's a really big problem, and we definitely need to probably provide more resources and advocacy for those people that are experiencing sexual violence and under PREA would be the appropriate vehicle.
Yeah.
And
I would add one thing to that.
Go
ahead.
I would hope that it would be gender neutral too.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I know Elsa, you were about to say something, but I know one of the caucuses, we just rolled out a number of pieces of reform legislation. And so a part of that is for the officers to wear body cams inside of our correctional institutions. And so we know that would be helpful to identify or eliminate some of these incidents that we're talking about. But Elsa, you mentioned the prison rape. Could you repeat the act again? Prison rape.
Yeah, it's the Prison Rape Elimination Act, or PREA, sometimes it's called.
Thank you.
And actually, I just remembered that in New York State, there is actually supposedly a tracking system being set up for corrections for rape kits that are collected in corrections. So I can provide more information on that at another time, and it's something that we've been keeping our eye on. But, there are rape kits that are collected in prison. Where are they going? And it's it's a good question. They should probably be included in the tracking system.
Okay.
There's a link in the chat. Somebody just sent the PREA Resource Center.
And I will take a second just to recognize Daphne from Rain, who's the grassroots advocacy, and then Dana and Dustin, who, if you haven't met Dana yet on our Facebook group, Dana is fabulous throughout the session, making sure that we've got all of the updates and everything. She's a big advocate for us all. So our next question, and this is, we've got our Facebook advocacy group, which is advocates, supporters, and family members who really are passionate about this issue. They want to know what support can they provide? What would be the best thing that they can do during this session that might help you as legislators move this along?
Well, for the Senate side, the Senate bill, for Linda Stewart's bill, it's been already assigned to committee. So it's the first stop is the Criminal Justice Subcommittee. So it's important that we have as many people as possible write in the chair of the committee and the committee members of criminal justice. It's likely going to be criminal justice in the House and in the Senate. So although the House side hasn't been assigned yet, it's important to work at first stop so that we can get it moving. So letters, emails, calls to the office of the chair and the members of the criminal justice committees in both the House and the Senate, I think, is crucial, and will help it to move through the process.
We can put that in on the Facebook page.
And in the Senate, it's Senator Pizzo chairs the committee that it will go to first. It has not had a weak assignment. I've only spoken to him, but I know that it can't be done before the first week in March.
Good news, Senator Pizzo has actually, the chairman has previously sponsored a similar legislation in years prior. So that actually gives us a lot of hope that he will be calling
Right.
because he
just keep, they don't need to call me. I've got the bill. but they should call Senator Pizzo and make sure he knows that there's a big interest in this. He'll be happy to know that.
Good.
And additionally, even try to schedule a meeting with Senator Pizzo or his staff, because I think getting in front of them and making sure you do it, staying on top of them is crucial.
And of course, if anybody is interested, I know there will come a point that there may be opportunity for testimony. I've had a couple people reach out to me and say that they are that they had issues with their rape kit tracking and they're willing to testify. So please, you can just DM me or shoot me an email. I think my email is out there on the Facebook page, and I'll make sure to connect you with all the folks that are going to be coordinating that. Most likely Daphne and Camille.
Well, and
I'll
during
just-
COVID, it's going to be difficult for them to do as they did last year with Donna's Law, because they have to come up and they have to go to the convention center at FSU in order to testify, because they're not allowed in the committee room. So we don't have a large group of people coming to committee and being able to get up face to face. They can get up at the convention center, as many people who wish, just like it was face to face, but they have to go to a separate location. And the Senate is not really seeing, no one's allowed on the any floor on the Senate. They're only senators, the staff, and media. That's all that's allowed at the moment on the Senate side of the building.
It's going to be an interesting session.
Senator Stewart, are they taking virtual testimony? Can people sign up?
No. You mean like a like now? No.
Wow.
They've talked about it. They've talked about it, but right now you have to go to the convention center and you fill out the same paperwork you did whenever you came before us, and then they run it over to the chairman, and then we call the names and they come up, and it's been very smoothly operated, but nobody's allowed in the room because they're not allowed on the floor.
Right.
Wow.
It's a little different, and I think Emily was about to say it's a tiny bit different on the House side. We do have people that can come in, but it's quite limited, it's quite restricted, and I think they have to notify they can only come in if we have a bill up, and they have to notify or reserve a spot 3 hours prior to the meeting. So we have a little less restriction, but Senator Stewart is right. We don't have a lot of movement in the building from our organizations. So, and I'm not sure, Emily, maybe you can answer. I think we can give virtual testimony, but I haven't been in a committee that we've had that to happen. Representative Schlossberg?
Yeah, I agree. I'm right with you. I'm not sure about the virtual testimony. We have allowed speakers and we've had a lot of testimony at the committees, but I'm not sure about virtual.
Right.
We'll have to keep an eye on that. I have one more question here. Once the bill is approved, besides funding, Are both hospital and CSI departments going to work together or have a liaison? And once it's verified as rape, though they may be serving time, is extra time added? Also, will they be able to keep it confidential from the public? Lots of questions. So the first one is, are hospitals and the lab, and I think it's not really CSI, but the lab's going to work together? And then what happens?
There's language in the bill that requires all everyone to work together, all entities to work together on this, and it's specifically it located in the bill. We've included that.
And then once verified, can the rapist be forced to serve extra time?
Well, for that offense, that would they would give an offense for each victim.
And what about keeping the victim's identity confidential from the public?
I
recently had a law enforcement officer tell a rape victim that they could disclose their name to the media.
Yeah,
Are they talking about the rape kit system, the tracking system, or are they talking about just in general? Because the tracking system is totally anonymous.
Yeah, I think it's in general.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah, as it relates to tracking, nobody has access to that besides the victim about who the victim is or that. But as it relates to like a prosecution and going through the process of prosecuting the offender, unless the victim is a minor, I don't believe there's nothing in this bill that protects the identity of the victim.
And I don't know about adult victims being protected in terms of their identity in Florida.
I think that generally you've got two things at play. One, you've got the fact that most criminal prosecutions are courts of record and they're open courts, unless there's been a motion to close the hearing and redact the names. But most court records are public records when it comes to adults. With regards to the rape kit tracking system, it's not like anybody would be able to log on to that tracking system and then look through all the data. That's not going to happen. And then normally in terms of media ethics, the media tries to do a very good job of protecting the identity of the victim, particularly if the victim does not want to be identified. So, I know I've worked with a lot of reporters that will not identify the victim, even if it's an adult victim. But if you have a victim who is an advocate and is coming forward and saying, I want to speak publicly about this, then sure, their name is likely to be published.
So I don't know if this is the case in other states, but someone's asking, will the survivor need a sign off of a therapist to be able to track the rape kit?
No, there's no requirement written into the bill that would require a therapy session or a therapist, if that's the question.
No, it's not. I haven't seen that anywhere. And they just usually they'll get a number when they leave the hospital, and that's the number they'll log into the tracking system. So it really just comes from the hospital. It's not related to anything else.
To me, it's this, back in the 80s, it's like the HIV testing. You would go, you'd have your blood drawn, you get a code, and you could call and give them the code. And, if we could do it back in the 80s, I have no idea why we can't do it now. I have someone asking if at some point in time if we can't do public testimony, would writing their testimony out be helpful? And telling their story.
Like sending an email? Is that what they mean?
Or submitting it to be read?
I would say yes in the House. We've actually had that happen.
I would say if you give it to someone to read, they would be able to, they'll have 3 minutes and then they get cut off. But I would think that someone could come and read a note from a friend of theirs that couldn't make it. I don't know, but they wouldn't be given 3 minutes and then another 3 minutes. They wouldn't be allowed that.
They can always email it. It can always email it to the committee chair and to the committee members, and make sure that it's out there. And I don't know how it is in Florida, but some states actually have a form online where you officially submit testimony, but otherwise you can send it to the chair of the committee, I'm assuming.
Right.
Yeah, and it could be
Right.
public. Some of the testimony or those type of comment cards are published into the record after the committee meeting, so it will be online for.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think specifically they're clarifying, specifically they're talking about because they can't give in-person testimony. Would that be?
And they email.
Yeah, can they
Yes.
email their testimony so that at least they're getting it? I know last year, you know, I can remember, I don't know how many people called me and said that sitting through the testimony at Donna's Law, that there wasn't a dry eye in the house, that they were all
Absolutely.
crying, and it was the most emotional thing they'd ever sat through. And, you know, it does make a difference, you know, it does make a difference. I mean, we did not have a single, I mean, Senator Stewart was a champion in one committee that was, I didn't think we were going to make it out of, but we did, your order, but we didn't have a single no. Yeah, shall remain nameless. But, you know, not a single no the entire time, because this isn't a partisan issue. Violence against women should not be partisan. So, all right, well, we are getting close to time. I'm going to give everybody just one last minute to one last thought. I just personally want to say thank you all for being here tonight, to starting this journey with us. Again, this legislative session. Representative Schlossberg, I know you're new to our survivor group, but I just really appreciate everything that you're doing already. So I will start with you, Representative Schlossberg, and just let you say some last final words, and then we'll go around my visual Zoom here.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you to all of you and everybody who has participated tonight. This is incredibly, I take this issue as a priority, and this is incredibly important and vital to our community as a whole. It's really refreshing to hear, you know, from all of the people here tonight on this panel. I'm motivated and ready to work with Senator Stewart and Representative Davis on this legislation and moving it through both chambers and getting it past this session. So thank you again. Thank you all for your advocacy. You know, this panel and it was a phenomenal idea and very informative to me as well. So thank you for that.
Senator Stewart.
You know, every year we have challenges on bills, but this particular bill should not be challenged in any way, because we're trying to empower the survivors to give them options to update their status and have them more comfortable with, you know, where they are with their kid, and give them hope that they might be able to find the person that has really ruined their life, basically. So we need everybody on board when these things start going to committee. We need to push hard for emails. Is fine. If you can't get up there, that's fine too, but you can send the emails in or letters or whatever it is to communicate your support.
Thank you. Representative Davis.
Thank you, Carol. And thank you, ladies, for just being warriors on this topic. I'm just glad to be a part of the team and just be here with you in this fight. I love what Senator Stewart said, and she was trying to be nice when she was talking to the audience, and she said, just communicate. I think she wanted to say, and I'll say it for her, we need the audience that's listening to bombard the committee and bombard the chair, because we want this bill to be heard. We want it agended, and we want these ladies to be able to get this bill across the finish line. Thank you, Carol, for bringing up Donna's Law. And you're absolutely right. When we had the opportunity, there was never a dry eye. So if anyone can't get up there, the most impactful thing they can do, again, is bombard the committee with their emails, phone calls, and yes, please send a written email to testify in that way. But I am looking forward to seeing this bill get across the finish line, because it is time that we have the funding for this to be able to rectify some of these wrongs against the women that have endured this victimization. So again, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this panel today.
Thank you. And Camille?
Yeah, I just want to amplify what Representative Davis said, that I can't stress enough how important it is for people to contact the chair of the committee. And I want to include in that the Appropriations Committee, because if we get a referral to appropriations, it's going to be super important to get it through that committee as well. Otherwise, appropriations is where bills go to die. So, and then I just want to thank the media for being here and participating in this Facebook Live. I know we have some reporters with us today, and there literally isn't a single piece of legislation that I've been able to get through in my 23 years without the media and without that bright light of accountability. So I just want to thank you for participating and being present today as well.
Thank you. Elsa?
Well, I don't have anything unique to say after everybody, but if there's anything that Joyful Heart can do in terms of helping folks with letter writing, language, talking points, statistics, anything like that, I'm sure Carol can connect us up. And we do have a lot of language on endthebacklog.org on tracking, so that could be helpful. I think one of the things, just to say, 30 states have done this. Big states like California and Texas and Illinois, and we have all the states are listed on our website. So it's it's time for Florida to join that growing list. So anything that we can do to help with the process, we are here for the long haul.
Thank you. Thank you. And I just want to say, Gail, I know you're on. I so appreciate you being the face of this. We are all ready to go, get such a passionate group of survivors and advocates on this wide group of people. And so we're ready to roll up our sleeves and get started. So hopefully 6 months from now, we'll all be celebrating that this is a new law in the state of Florida, and we can start on our next important topic. So thank you all again for being here this evening. And with that, we're going to sign off. Daphne, thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much.